Welcome to the next episode of The Adventures of Artemis and Athena. I'm Artemis, that's Athena, and today we are talking about costumes, specifically women designers in television, theater, and film. And we're going to go into kind of like briefly our experiences with costuming and costumers.
Because we're both performers, and I think, especially for me, because I love costuming and I do a lot of it as a hobby, it's so important to me as a performer and making character choices that there are decisions I've made once I've seen a costume. So for like Brigadoon, when I was playing Maggie Anderson, I had these kind of tics and this body language planned out, but then I saw the costume and she had this really full, fun plaid skirt, and I just thought, you know what, she plays with her skirt in the back. Just tics that the audience probably never really like consciously picked up on.
Yeah.
But it mattered to me as a performer what I was wearing. How did I move? How did I stand?
And costumes are really like the last thing that comes into a production before it goes up. And at least for me, when I played Tracy Turnblad in Hairspray, I didn't know what my final costume was going to be until about 2 weeks before we started the show. So I really had no clue about what I could do, if I was going to be wearing a straight skirt, if I was going to wear a full skirt. All of those things matter, especially when you're dancing, and especially with a character as flamboyant and as perky and bubbly as Tracy is. You know, you want to ruffle some skirts, but you don't know until like that final fitting, and it matters.
It does.
It matters.
And the costumers think about that. And it's just the way the production works that it's usually kind of some of the last bits to put in there because they're doing so much work. Like we're rehearsing and dancing and sweating and singing or learning our lines, but they are behind the scenes building. They're pulling.
Yes.
I mean, we start measurements and fittings very early on in the rehearsal process.
Yeah.
So we get a sense of some things, but other things are just always morphing because they're learning, they're watching us, they're seeing what we do. Yes. So it's this big collaboration that I like.
Yeah. And I think we've both costumed for shows. I've only done one, and you've done several.
I do. It's not something I enjoy. I'm just too conceptual.
Yes.
And conceptual is not great because you have to take into account lighting, staging, and I think that's where I really fall short because I'm like, let's do Othello in black and white. By the way, it's a lighting nightmare. So that's me going, this would be fun.
Well, and, you know, you have to take into account the time period that the production that you're doing is set in. Like, for me, I costumed Two Gentlemen of Verona, but it was set in the 19-teens in Verona. So you had all of these other conditions that you had to really go into. And our Valentine, I did kind of push him more into the 20s and did straight up Prince Naveen from Princess and the Frog because I knew it would look good on him, and I was just not gonna not have that. But you have to think about the different types of characters you have within the realm that you're costuming, whether it's, you know, the Prince Naveen Valentine or it's the pirate-esque outlaws that you have running around. You've got the, you know, the Duke, who's very, like, stately. You know, you have to take into account everything.
And it has to work together as a unit.
Yes.
So you can't just be like, I want the princess to look like this, and then this person look like this, but they don't look like they came from the same production.
Right.
So that's something that is in their minds, where they have to make it all work together. They have to make a story come to life on the screen or on the stage without words. So that if you have this on mute, or if you have earphones in and you're listening to it, you still know who is who, what is and what's happening in the story, what point of the story are we at, just by what is on someone's body.
And I will say this. This is something my first director said to me, my very first production at 16. It has stuck with me. Stephanie, if you're watching, you know what I'm about to say. And Athena knows Stephanie.
We both know Stephanie, so I giggle.
Never piss off a costumer. And it holds true, because if you make them mad, they will make sure you look like crap.
And yet still look like part of the production. So
yes.
It's a very subtle thing.
If you need, alterations, they might not get done until the very last minute.
And I think that goes to saying with like any of the backstage and the offstage crew, who are still very, very important. So respect them. Yes. Especially respect your costumer. Don't hold back.
Just respect people.
And if something's not right, if something's hurting, if you're a performer, you need to speak up, because they don't know. And they're not trying to make it uncomfortable for you. They want you to be comfortable. So if you don't say something and it hurts you, that's kind of on you. Yeah. And I'm especially referencing corsets. Corsets are a big thing for me. Corsets should not hurt you. Historically speaking, people did not tight lace. So let's nix that in the bud right now. But if a corset is hurting you, it's not fitted right. But if you don't say something and just assume that it has to hurt, you're not going to get it fixed, because nobody knows.
And I'm guilty of that. There were several productions where I had to wear a corset, and I now have scar tissue on my back because I would pop boning in the middle of the show, and you can't say, hey, I'm popping, like, seal boning. You just shove it back in and you do your job. And, they can't fix it if they don't know.
Right. And that's the thing. If they can't fix it, and they can't make it better if you don't speak up. So don't be afraid to speak up. Do it politely.
Within reason.
Right. Be polite about it. Just, if something is legitimately hurting you, I mean, I've spoke up quite a bit when I'm in these gorgeous suits, which I love, these beautiful 50s suits, but I have to do a fan kick, and it's a pencil skirt. So, I mean, I've had to speak up and go, so at this point in the stage, I have this. And you can say that without, you're not going to hurt their feelings. I mean, it's going to hurt my feelings as a performer, because that's a beautiful suit. Now you have to go find something else for me. But speak up, say something. Well, because they're there to help. They're there to make the production good.
And if you don't like it, if you don't like what you're wearing, like, suck it up.
Because there's a reason for it.
Yeah.
They didn't do it because they wanted someone to not look good. There's a reason for the story and the way it's being told that those choices were made.
Yes. Now, if a costume is physically harming you, speak up. But if it's just because you don't like what you're wearing, just suck it up.
Yeah.
But moving on.
That was our big, PSA.
And just huge shout outs to anyone in, the community theater realm, the regional theater realm, who takes on huge musicals.
That's a
big play, task.
So thank you for putting clothes on our bodies. Really appreciate it. And doing everything you can to make us look and be able to do our job well.
And thank you for being there if we have a quick change. I just want to quickly mention that, because quick changes are a whole other animal, and costumers have to think about mechanics when it comes to quick changes. Yep. So thank you to everyone who does quick changes, who is there, the dressers, everyone. Thank you.
They make sure we can do our job and do it fabulously, and I love them.
Yes.
But for both of us, we have these big influences. So we're going to talk about why we love costuming and why it's such a passion. And I think it's funny because we're on completely opposite spectrums of our influences in costumes, which is good. Because you don't just need a costumer for historical bits and fantasy and sci-fi, but you need it for the normal everyday, the ones that look like they came out of 2020 or 2021. Somebody's behind that outfit choice.
Yeah.
Someone's behind that costume. I mean, just because I like, Colleen Atwood, who has done her work spans like centuries of styles.
Yes.
Because, I mean, she's won 4 Academy Awards for Chicago, Memoirs of a Geisha, Alice in Wonderland, the Tim Burton one, and Fantastic Beasts. Like, let's just look at that and the timeline and
the style
variety.
And the culture. Yeah.
And she always has this sort of edginess to her that I really enjoy. This dark bit, like Sleepy Hollow.
I think it speaks to your aesthetic because, like, you think about Sleepy Hollow and you know the legend, and then you add in the Christina Ricci, the Johnny Depp, and you get this kind of twisted, like.
That's what it is. It's
still historical
with a twist. Like Lemony Snicket. Some of these things we see that are very fantasy are things that do exist historically. They just might not have been mainstream.
Mm-hmm.
Which is kind of how I dress myself anyway. If it's weird, I want it. If that's an ugly, weird shoe, that's going in my cart and I'm purchasing it. Without realizing it, I've loved Colleen Atwood since I was young.
Well, and then, like, on the flip side of that, with me, I tend to stick to certain campy aspects. For me, Mona May, who is sometimes called the queen of the 90s movies, is, like, a legend. She's the genius behind Clueless, Never Been Kissed, Romeo and Michelle's high school reunion, Master of Disguise with that giant, like, turtle shell, like, suit. Like, that is something that just makes my little campy weirdo heart sing. And, anything that just, like, looks a little cheap and chintzy, I kind of want it. Like,
but they're iconic. Think about it. That's like, if you think about Clueless, you have these images and these outfits that immediately come to your mind.
Cher's yellow suit.
Yeah, she's the one behind it. And you may think, well, she just went to the store and purchased something. And I don't know the story behind the yellow suit. I will actually Google that. If it was a custom-made piece or if it was purchased. But she still had to go and make a decision. Purchase
she still had to
tailor it. Yes. Someone is still behind these choices.
The nanny.
Yeah.
Like,
oh my goodness.
That could be an episode in its own, Brandon's Closet. But she often wore, designer clothing, but someone still had to go out and source those designer pieces. And
I was actually, just as a modern example, I was watching the behind the scenes of Schitt's Creek. Like, they are wearing pieces that make sense for the Schitt's family, that are designer, but they had to go source them, and then they have to make choices on character and overall look for that episode. Like, if you think about David Rose, Moira, like, they all have these very distinct styles. Someone made those choices. A costume designer made those choices. In collaboration with the team, with the actors, with the production team. Like, you can look back at, like, Breakfast at Tiffany's. Someone made the choice.
Yeah. Edith Head, she's, like, first of all, she's the inspiration behind Edna Mode in The Incredibles with the black glasses. Brilliant. Look her up.
I was like, if you don't know that movie, please look that movie up and watch it.
But Edith Head, she's the one who costumed Audrey Hepburn in Roman Holiday and Sabrina. These beautiful, iconic pieces that still to this day are influencing costumers.
Oh, people do wear them for Halloween. That's the mark. The Halloween costume.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's these
Outlander.
fabulous women. Yeah. Oh, Outlander's huge. Love Outlander. and everybody squeals. um,
Hello, Sam Hewen. Thank you.
but you have this woman, Terry, behind it. And she's mixing, if you don't know Outlander, it's a time travel show. She's mixing the 40s, 50s, and 60s in with the 18th century to tell a story to let you know that Claire is of another world. Now, y'all, I'm still halfway through season 2. Do not ruin this. Do not ruin this. I have just got stars and I'm working on it. Okay? So don't. But she has to mix this to tell the story.
And to tell
that
it
Dior 18th century suit. I mean, you could pull up that very famous New Look Dior from 1947, I believe. And she's translated into 18th century. Like,
well, and
blown.
Even if you think about the wedding dress that Claire wore when she married Jamie, you know, someone had to make that. Like, and that takes into account, you know, the lighting. Yes, it may be historical, but the fabrics may not be because of how things are lighted. And I mean, you can speak to this a little bit better than I can, but you know, there are historical costumers out there who are like, if it's not historical, I don't want it.
Right. But it's a whole different beast when it's on a stage or on screen. Something has to read in the lighting. It may not be the right weight of fabric, but on screen it looks like the right weight of fabric. But then you go see like an exhibit, and you're like, that's not right. Well, there are concessions they have to make. And sometimes pieces have to be remade. Like they spend thousands and thousands of hours making something, put it on, and then they get to the day and the lighting doesn't work. And they have to remake it. That's crazy.
Like, for instance, you know, you could put Jamie in this perfect, you know, linen shirt or tunic, I guess. And it looks great when there's not lighting. But the second you turn on those boom lights and everything, it looks stark white and it doesn't work. So
and it
you have to make those
raw.
concessions.
Yeah.
Yes.
Or you do something, and then I have to mention the Game of Thrones because there is some embroidery on those pieces that is done by a lady that is something that you don't even notice sometimes. It doesn't register in your head, but it is stunning work up close. And that's a testament to the world building. A costumer has to help with the world building in such a way that as an audience member, you might not even be aware of it consciously. But if you had taken that away, you might have been like, something's off. It doesn't feel lived in.
Yeah.
And I think that's another testament to the costumer. And a lot of women are in this field.
Yeah. And like you think, like kind of going back to like iconic things, you think about Beetlejuice, you automatically think that black and white striped suit with the green and the purple and everything. You don't necessarily think about the people creating it. And Aggie Rogers, who did costume Beetlejuice, she's the whole reason we have Miss Argentina, we have Beetlejuice, we have the Lydia Dietz.
I'll say that name again. There is a number of times we can say that name.
Sorry.
Don't do it.
Him.
Listen, I'm not about to open that up on 2021, okay?
But we have like the Lydia Dietz red wedding dress, the Delia Dietz.
All the pop culture reference is coming from someone who created that, and we don't always remember their name.
And that, I think, is a disservice to the people who create.
Yeah. So this is basically our saying, let's take some time to recognize where it comes from and maybe learn their names, especially if you're doing a Halloween costume, or for all the cosplayers out there. And I know a lot of cosplayers already do this. They do their research. But always try to look up who did it.
Yeah.
Be a little nerdy.
I think
look it up.
I think one of the biggest ones for you and I, especially because we've watched this movie for years is Jenny Beavan with Ever After. That, oh.
Just a moment. The wings, and then she's running, and then the rain, and then the...
Just so. Chef's kiss. You don't think about the work that goes into this, guys. Keep in mind, there are strong women behind these. And yes, there are men costumers, Bob Mackie, but
there's a vast majority of women who are behind the work of the clothing that you see on the screen. And I think we need to recognize them.
Yes.
Like, give them a shout out.
We have lists, guys.
Mine aren't readable. My handwriting sucks. Oh.
So,
take a little time, find your favorite movie, look up those ladies who made those clothing. You'll be better for it.
And I think it'll give you a new appreciation for the piece of work that it is. So yay! Costuming! Yay. And this is just a brief overview. If you guys want more, let us know down below. I'll link a card up there to our last episode if you want to catch that. We're going to start putting them into a playlist, guys. So definitely check that out. You know we're going to be blowing up your socials. So check us out.
Yay!
Yay! Until next time, I'm Artemis.
I'm Athena.
And we'll see you next time.